Welcome, one and all, to Scotch and Smoke Rings, episode 479. I am your friendly neighborhood Oxhorn here, as always, with my suspender set to maximum stun. I realize that this program is about, many days late. I was out of town, as many of you know, and I just recently got back, and I told everybody watching my premieres of Fallout 76 that I would do a big Q&A episode today at around 7 o'clock. I ended up being about 5 minutes late. I beg for your forgiveness. I had problems getting my setup situated. I took this camera with me to the Greenbrier Resort in West Virginia, so I had to finagle it to get it back up online. Anyway, let me know how the sound is like. I'm still trying to figure out if I have everything done correctly, and I think I do. Well, we have a lot to talk about. We just released a whole bunch of content about Fallout 76, and I am itching to hear your feedback. Now, please bear in mind, let's only talk about... I'm happy to do a Q&A. But let's only talk about what I actually covered in my videos, or what has been talked about by other YouTubers, because I can't answer questions about the game like a Bethesda dev, because I'm not. I'm just a guy who was invited to West Virginia to play the game early, so I only know answers to questions about the game that you would pick up after playing it for 3 hours as an invited guest. So just bear that in mind when asking your questions. I'll do my very best to answer all of them. Well, when I say all of them, I mean the ones I happen to see. But before we do, I realize that questions are already coming in. But there is a ritual here at the beginning of the program, and we gotta... Okay. So I don't find a clean Scotch glass, so I'm gonna have to use this one, which I picked up on my trip. It's a Washington, D.C. Starbucks mug. This is part of my family tradition. Anytime we travel somewhere, we pick up a Starbucks mug with the name of that location on it. Yes, I know, it's very middle class, but it's our family tradition, and I enjoy it. Today we are going to be drinking some 10-year-old Laphroaig. A nice peaty Scotch. And let's see, what are we going to smoke today? I only got one cigar while I was on my trip. So I was very grateful to get back to good old Seattle, back to my home, so I could smoke a cigar. They didn't allow smoking on at the resort. Well, I mean, you could smoke outside, but you couldn't smoke in the hotel room or at the casino or any place like that, so it was a desert. It was an absolute desert. Anyway, I'm going to have another video for you tomorrow. It's going to be an Oxhorn video log, kind of about my trip to Greenbrier, with a little bit of footage that I captured from with this camera while I was walking around, and then a lot more footage from the game that I wasn't able to include in the 3 videos that I published today. Okay, fire, quickly. Lots of questions coming in. I got to get to them. Hold on, fire. There we go. Jacob says, what's your opinion on Fallout Miami? This is a Fallout 76 Q&A, my friend. I saw the trailer for Fallout Miami, and it looks stunning, and I want to play it. That's all I can say about Fallout Miami. I played Fallout 76, so that's what we can talk about. Jacob Prower says, did they help you out if you had any questions in the game? Yes, they did. They were extremely helpful. By the way, I'm going to assume that you watched all 3 Fallout 76 videos that I published today, so I hope no one gets upset if spoilers. There's not a bunch of spoilers, but I will reference things. So, for example, in my video on Flatwoods, I got stuck during the quest. I was inside the church and I assumed you registered to become a responder from inside the church. But no, you had to go across the street to that red building. It was a little unclear, honestly, to be perfectly honest. So I asked a Bethesda dev and they came over and helped me out. They were very helpful. Corey Trevor says, big up Moore County. Well, thank you very much for the tip. And I agree, big up Moore County each and every day. You can big up Moore County at home. You could big up Moore County at the office. Or when you're sleeping at night, you can dream about bigging up Moore County. It's a fascinating pastime. Taz Gribsby says, Ox, did playing on Xbox give you a better understanding of what limitations consoles players have in Fallout games? Yeah. Look, I don't want to get too elitist here, because I know I have many console followers and viewers, but I have a greater appreciation for what you console players have to suffer through every single day. I was not. Maybe it's just the transition. I'm sure many console players, if you've never touched a PC for gaming, would have a similar struggle. But trying to play that on the Xbox, it was just extremely difficult, and I was really, I don't know. I before this, I was on the fence. I didn't know whether or not I was going to get it for the Xbox, because you get the beta early on the Xbox. You get it on the 23rd, pardon me. Whereas on the PC, you have to wait until the 30th. But I've decided now. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to get it on the Xbox. Corey Trevor says Baltimore County, Oxyman. Yes, there is a county called Baltimore. Is that the county I was exploring in Fallout 76? Jeremiah Golder says, thank you for the content you released on 76. Was it easy to be distracted by other players while delving the ruins of lore, or did they get in the way? I go more into this in my video log that I'm going to publish tomorrow. I was more distracted by party chat. The entire time I had to sit down and play with my party, I had headphones on and they were talking with each other in my ear. Now, this was supposed to be helpful because we had the Fallout dev there, the Bethesda dev there who could answer questions for us, and I made use of that a couple of times to get some questions answered, so it was nice. But it was really distracting because they were constantly talking, just constantly talking. And I'm sitting here trying to read a terminal or read a note, and I honestly couldn't hear what I was hearing from any of the holotapes that I picked up, because the noise from the chat was just so much. Now, it could just be that I'm weird and I get distracted easily, and I think that might be part of it. But I probably won't do a whole lot of grouping in Fallout 76. Ross says, are you bothered by the lore-breaking caps currency? No, and I don't see why it's lore-breaking. We have to remember, yes, the caps from Fallout 1 and Fallout 2 were backed by hub script, backed by hub bucks, which is what gave them value. But caps appeared in Fallout 3. Caps appeared in Fallout 4. East Coast. No NCR. That's right. The traders of the hub were supposed to be backing the caps, which gave them value. By the times of Fallout 3 and Fallout 4, the NCR owned the hub. The hub was part of NCR territory, so presumably the NCR was also verifying, backing the value of a cap. But on the East Coast, the cap is still used as currency. But it's highly unlikely that the NCR, all the way on the West Coast, is going to be backing the value of a cap. So if we're going to sit here and complain about the lore-breakingness of finding caps as currency in Fallout 76 25 years after the bombs dropped because the hub hasn't established itself as a trader empire yet, then we also have to say, well, then why is the cap a primary currency being used on the East Coast, even if it's 200 years after the bombs dropped? adopt when the NCR has never been there and has no influence on the East Coast? The thing is, just because we know how the caps became a valuable currency in one location, doesn't mean we can discount a cap ever being used as currency anywhere else in the world. Remember, the reason the cap is used as currency is because it's plentiful, it's conveniently sized. Because of Nuka-Cola, because of just the plethora of Nuka-Cola, all of the bottles that were produced before the end of the war, we've got in just a ton of bottle caps, which can be easily traded. That's why it ended up becoming a type of currency. Yes, on the West Coast, the hub script backed it with an actual value, but that doesn't mean that, for example, on the East Coast, people couldn't have adopted caps as currency on their own for all of the other reasons I mentioned, like them simply being convenient. So, I don't think the caps in Fallout 76 are any more lore-breaking than the caps in any other East Coast Fallout game. Robert of War says, what's the weirdest enemy you're looking forward to learning more about? The Mothman, that bat dragon thing? Honestly, I want to learn more about the Mothman. After exploring the Mothman Museum and finding his statue and finding the shrine and his Mothman eggs all over the place, I walk away with just more questions. I want to know what's been going on. Is he a real man? Is he more moth than man? How did he develop? Is he sentient? Is he a good guy, a bad guy? I mean, a lot of those questions never got answered in the holotapes that we explored near the Mothman Museum, and so I'm really excited to learn more about that. All right, my cigar is out, of course, because I get caught up on answering questions, and the fire goes out. Clean your room, bucko, says Blank Spot. I don't know. This is my next big task. I keep on delaying organizing my office. I just moved in, by the way. I just moved into this house because I've been busy with my videos. So this week, I'm going to be taking a bit of a break on my videos. I'll still publish this week, of course, but I'm going to be taking a few days off at least to kind of organize my office a bit. Dawson Holiday says, did you learn anything about private servers? Not anything that we didn't already know. They are still considering private servers. It's still on the table. Corey Trevor says, say hi to the beautiful women. Hi, beautiful women. Grievous Reborn says, I can't play FPS on PC. Too uncomfortable. I have to play them on Xbox, but I can play MMOs on PC, and I hate them on console. That's interesting. I'm exactly the opposite. Well, no, I'm not exactly the opposite. I'm just not a console player at all. But it's interesting that you prefer a genre of game on one platform than the other. That's interesting. The Boy says caps are not really lore-breaking because in post-war World War II, Berlin normal marks were completely worthless and used cigarettes as currency instead. Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. Even in Fallout New Vegas, when you have the NCR backing a currency, in New Vegas, there's the NCR buck, which presumably the NCR had put most of their effort into. They wanted their currency to be established, and Caesar's Legion did the exact same thing. Despite that, caps are still worth more in Fallout New Vegas. So presumably by the 2200s, it's no longer the hub script or the hub buck that's giving caps its value. Caps have become valuable in and of themselves. If caps are worth more than NCR and presumably the hub merchants-backed currency in Fallout New Vegas. Great point. Goofy Old Guy Plays says, did you get to experience VATS? That's the one thing that I just didn't get. I tried. I didn't get it. I understand that you can't stop time in an MMO. I understand that. I get it. It's impossible. You just can't do that. Giving one player the ability to stop time when he uses VATS, you can't do that in an MMO. I get it. What I don't get is how VATS has been implemented. Now, I realize that you have to spec into it. You have to have your high perception and your VAX perk cards. And to be fair, I didn't do any of that. I just tried the basic VATS that we get outside of the box, outside of the vault. And, you know, it just highlights the whole body. You hear the noise, but it doesn't move the edge of your gun, the barrel of your gun at all. It doesn't cause auto-aiming. You can't target limbs. Basically, this ghoul is running towards you, and as it runs towards you, the percentage chance of hitting it increases. It just goes from like 40% to 80% until it gets really close. But the thing that made VATS useful in previous games is stopping time. Just allowing you to process things and to select where you wanted to do your damage and to choose the kind of weapons you wanted, and that's gone now. VATS doesn't work that way at all. It's still valuable because you can use it to detect enemies. Like if you don't know where you're being attacked from, you can pop VATS quickly. You hear the noise, you see the outlined border, okay, you know where the enemy is coming from. But from a gameplay combat perspective, I didn't understand how it was supposed to work. And I only had 3 hours, and I didn't want to spend 30 minutes of that time figuring out VATS. So I just didn't bother with it, which is why I didn't cover it much in my video. Brett Buss says, your channel was the only one to show how much lore is in the game. Thanks, man. Make any cool connections in the gaming media? No. I'm not one of those guys that goes out and schmoozes and does networking. I don't do networking. I mean, in terms of connections, I had great times with lots of wonderful people. I got to meet other YouTubers, and we had, you know, drinks and smoked cigars. I got to meet Bethesda employees who were exceptionally kind and sat down at the final dinner of the event with a bunch of other wonderful people from Bethesda. So, I mean, I got to know a lot of people, but I didn't go there to schmooze. That's not what I did. I went there to play Fallout 76, and I got my footage, and it turned out really well. In terms of the lore, I knew that no one else would cover the lore. I knew that everyone was going to log into the game and just start running in some direction and hope they stumble upon something interesting. And I'm sure that many people did stumble upon something interesting. I don't want to discredit the footage that other people have shot. That's not what I'm trying to do. But I knew that sitting down to explore Terminal was not something many of the players wanted to do. And I understand that because they were so short on time that was probably the last thing they wanted to do. They wanted to do some of the gunplay and see how VATS worked and you know, try out some of the new chems and the game mechanics. That's what interested them. But I know that one of the major criticisms of Fallout 76 from many players has been about the single-player experience. And the single-player experience is all about lore. It's environmental storytelling. It's the stories you can piece together by exploring the ruins around you. And if that's missing, then it's not a Fallout game, right? It just doesn't feel like what we're used to. And so I wanted to know whether or not that was gone. And I'm happy to say that it's not gone. We were able to explore many locations, as I showed off in my videos, that were chock full of lore. In fact, there was so much lore in some places that it was frankly overwhelming. Like a Fleetwood, or whatever it was called. So yeah, there's plenty of lore. And I wanted to show it off. Big Boy says, did you like the PvP aspect? And I'm good with the controller. Well, I'm glad that someone is. I didn't do a lot of PvP. In fact, I didn't do any PvP towards the very end there. If you saw in my third video I published today, there was a big nuclear detonation. As people were running down the hill to commit suicide in the radiation, a few of us were shooting at each other. I got shot a couple of times, and it really was not a lot of damage because I never engaged back. But yeah, I didn't engage in PvP, but PvP is something I am looking forward to. I was big into PvP when I played MMOs in the past. The one MMO that I think shaped my love of MMOs more than any other was Dark Age of Camelot. I don't know if any of you recall it. But in that game, I was all about PvP and sacking castles and, you know, grouping together to take down other raiding parties. And so I really enjoy PvP. And I'm looking forward to having the opportunity to do PvP in Fallout 76. That said, I'm not a raider, so I'm probably not going to be going out of my way to find someone to fight. I probably won't be doing duels. But if someone tries to murder me, I'm looking forward to taking the opportunity to put him in the ground. Corey Wilson says, I saw that you were playing on an Xbox before you said it in the video, and I was like, so that's why he's punching air. That's fair. Jeremiah says, so in the holotape from Colonel, he says he's a 13-year-old kid and mentions doing pre-war things like cheating on math tests. Yet he discusses it in 2096. There's no way that the timelines match up there. Yeah. You're right. Ooh, yeah, you're right. There's no way. 13 years old. In 2096, he would have been 6. No, that would have been... He would have been born after the apocalypse. That wouldn't work. I mean, I hate to say it, but I think you may have found a lore inconsistency there. I didn't even pick that up when I went through it. Yeah, he's talking as if he's a pre-war young boy who had a really abusive father, and the father would accuse him in his poor behavior for all the horrible things that went on around them. And so then naturally when the apocalypse happened, he thought that it happened because of something he did. But that wouldn't work 25 years after the bombs dropped, and we're supposed to have met him in 2096. I keep trying to make it work, and it doesn't work. Good point. Good one, Jeremiah. Oro Tassan says, do you think that the Creation Club, if put in, would be unfair? I mean, I don't understand. There's a lot in that question. Like, I don't know what you would think would be unfair about it, but it's also completely unnecessary. They already have their microtransaction store. It's the Atom store. And we earn Atom by just playing the game, or we can use real money to buy Atom. And that's how we're going to be downloading cosmetic things. So if you mean on top of that, would they add the Creation Club, which would give you non-cosmetic things? That won't happen because it's a multiplayer game. If it was a single-player game, then that kind of makes it irrelevant because, I mean, you're only competing against yourself in a single-player game. And if you decide that a big, awesome Gauss rifle is worth it to you, then you can buy it, and no one's going to accuse you of cheating or having an unfair advantage because you bought something from the Creation Club store. So they're not going to do that kind of stuff. They're not going to be selling powerful things that you can't otherwise get. It's only going to be cosmetics. Benjamin says, did you enjoy the game, though? Was it fun? Thoughts? Yeah, I had a good time. The entire experience was marred only by having to play on an Xbox. And so that's how I became frustrated. But that aside, I mean, I was loving every moment I had exploring that world, and I walked away wanting to learn more, and that's a good sign. Love the emotes, Mr. Real Madrid. Daniel says, I'm so happy they have southern accents. Me too. Pretty good voice acting so far. Lucas Petri says, do you know if they ever plan to implement VR in Fallout 76? I don't know, but if I were to guess, likely not. I mean, it took them almost 2 years to get VR. It took them 2 years to get VR working for Fallout 4, and to have a VR section for Fallout 76, I don't think that's on the table now, and it probably wouldn't come for a long time from now. Marinka says Fallout 76 lore more or less compared to past games. I mean, I had 3 hours to explore it, so I can't compare those 3 hours to the hundreds and hundreds of hours that I've spent in the other games. There is lore in Fallout 76. So far, it sounds really well voice acted, and even though we just kind of uncovered a discrepancy, more or less it's interesting. But I mean, I can't compare it to other games at this time. Tiana says, spoiler, from a video I saw there aren't as many in-game people to interact with, just other players. Do you think this will affect the game / lore a lot? I don't know if that's a spoiler. They announced a long time ago that there would not be any NPCs in the game. In terms of affecting the lore, they explained that with lore. So we go to Flatwoods, we don't find anyone alive, and there's a reason for that. The reason we find all of the bodies is because something happened. Now, we're going to find out what that something is later, but, you know, it's not inconceivable that there was a great catastrophe that killed everyone in West Virginia 6 years ago in 2096, November of 2096, to be precise. What exactly was that? We don't know yet. We've only played for 3 hours, so I think it will be explained. So I don't think it's going to negatively impact lore. Is it going to be welcome? That's the big question. Will people really miss voiced NPCs so much that it's going to ruin the gameplay for them? Possible. Me, not so much. I understand the lore of it. I will miss a voiced NPCs, but there's still going to be lots of holotapes, lots of environmental storytelling, plenty of quests. I mean, it's just a different type of game, so I'm fine. Mr. Random Potato says, when Fallout 76 beta comes out, will you gloss over the parts of the game you didn't catch, like the notes, the holotapes, buildings, etc., and the places you went? Yeah, when 76 comes out, my plan is to do a big series on the primary plot to the game, much in the way that I've done series on the primary plots of the other Fallout games, like Fallout New Vegas, for example, which I'm currently in the middle of producing. So yeah, I want to do a series on the primary plot of Fallout 76, which, as a necessity, will take me to many of the places I've been to in the past 3 videos. Goofy Old Guy says, being multiplayer, no console commands, right? Yeah, no console commands, no cheating. We'll still be able to take pictures because there's a camera system built in. But yeah, no console commands. Chris says, do you have an issue with the way they locked out some weapons based on levels? I mean, I don't have an issue from gameplay because that's the way every MMO works. You have to be a certain level to use a certain item. Every MMO is like that. Now, from a lore perspective, it doesn't make sense because I at any level, I mean, as an adult, I should be able to pick up any type of gun and try using it. I like the way they did it in previous games where it's special stat dependent. Like in Fallout New Vegas, for example, if you try to use a big weapon without enough strength, you can still use it, but you're not going to be as accurate or efficient. It's just not going to work as well for you unless you have the right special stat. I think that would have been a better way to go about it than doing it by player level. Player level does make it simpler, but here we're talking about game mechanics, which don't necessarily translate to lore very well. So when we play a game, we kind of have to separate the two. Okay, what's the game mechanic and what's the lore of the world? Two very different things. So ultimately, it doesn't bother me. Dawson says Oxhorn, West Virginia is not a southern state. Everyone seems to think that all rural states are southern, but they're not. I will admit that there are more similarities than differences, but still. That's a fine distinction. Thank you. J.A. Bristol says, for the love of Todd, please explain the Radiation King TV behind you. It's driving me nuts. Oh. That's right. So that's part of a prop that I was trying to get put together for my big studio when it gets finished. It's not a Radiation King TV. It's a predicted television. The Radiation King televisions from Fallout 3 in New Vegas were designed and modeled after the Predicta TV. This is a very rare type of TV that was only produced during a brief window of time in the late 50s and early 60s. So it's hard to find. This thing cost me a pretty penny, but when it arrived, it was damaged. So I'm working with the guy who sold it to me to try to decide whether or not we're just going to junk it or get it repaired. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to play it on my stream. But the idea was to have it as a piece of office furniture and then to play commercials and news broadcasts from the Fallout universe on the TV during my broadcasts, which I thought would be fun. Hey Ox, what's the story behind the Scorched? Ghouls? Infection? There is no set in stone story yet, but here's what I've gathered so far. There was some great disease or a virus that harmed the people of West Virginia in that area. In combination to that, there was a high particulate count of radioactive material in the water. I think that a combination of those two things caused people who drank the water of West Virginia to slowly ghoulify over time. But this strain of ghoul is very different from the ghouls we're used to because of the bacteria that was unique to West Virginia. Because they've been drinking such highly irradiated water, like crystals of radiation were starting to grow out of their skin. Now, they haven't gone completely feral yet because they can still wear clothing and wield weapons, but they're well on their way to being feral. Raniel says Colonel was 13 when he joined and recorded the holotape, not necessarily in 2096. The other survivors who are in 2096 stated that the responders weren't there. He could have recorded it in 2096. He couldn't have recorded it in 2096. That's a good point. We don't really know when he recorded that holotape. And in fact, you're right, it couldn't have been 2096. So Dasa Ben-Ami was the person who came to the church and decided to create the survivors' stories. She went around asking people to record their stories on holotapes. We found Tabitha's story, her story, and Colonel's story. But then we also found Dasa Ben-Ami lying dead on a stretcher, presumably killed by raiders. We don't really know, and yet on her inventory was her own story. So she asked Colonel to record his story when he arrived, but then when we went to the volunteer terminal, we saw that he was a registered responder who was good with kids. Like he counseled children, which gives us the impression that by 2096, the events that happened in that area, by that time he was an adult or an older kid. So you're right, it doesn't necessarily mean that he was 13 at the time that everyone died in 2096. Great point. That kind of resolves the issue. Thank you, Ranil. Did you see the pre-war bonnet in Fallout 76? Mrs. Z, I didn't, but I didn't do a whole lot of looting of pre-war ruins, so I don't know, but no, I didn't see it. Taz says, Ox, the holotape seemed really long and seemed to be a lot in small areas. I admit that the density of holotapes in Flatwoods was pretty staggering. I felt we were just listening to holotape after holotape after holotape, many of which were really long. The one about water, where Kesha was just talking about water for 5 minutes, man, that was scintillating stuff. And then someone asked me if there was something I didn't like about Fallout 76. If I'm perfectly honest, the whole responders storyline hasn't resonated with me yet. And I'm frustrated by the fact that they're using that bit of lore as a tutorial. I understand why they're doing it. They're trying to set up the story for later on. They're trying to explain why many of the creatures of the wasteland are the way they are, and why, when playing the game, we have to boil water and get a water purifier to purify it. They're giving us a lot of really great information that sets the stage early on and gives us actionable information that we can walk away with and use. So I get it. But it's not scintillating to sit there and listen about water for 5 minutes. It's just not. Now, once the kind of tutorial phase is over, I'm sure things will get much more interesting. As we learned when we got to Point Pleasant, and we started exploring the Mothman Museum, and we found all of those holotapes, each one of which was fascinating. The 2 radio plays, the sort of crazy guy talking about the darkness beneath the earth, the Watchers, all of that great stuff. So, yeah, I'm not particularly worried. I really enjoyed all the lore. Joseph Carroll says, huge fan, would love to see a 3D Fallout game take place in Chicago. Yeah, I don't know. I think the Chicago ship has sailed, not to put a pun on it, in Fallout Tactics, because I believe the Zeppelins crash landed in Chicago, and so a great portion of the game takes place there. Baconator says, hey Ox, are you hiring companions? I promise to keep my mouth shut unless you speak to me directly. Maybe a comment or 2 in battle. That's a great thought, but you know what? After having played it, I think I really want to do this solo thing. I think that's how I'm going to enjoy it more. I'm going to be able to focus on the game more if I'm playing by myself. Emil says, keep up the good work, though. I will still watch your Fallout 76 videos, even if I will not play it myself. Well, thank you very much. Affiliate 9 says, hey, Ox, wasn't there a plague that happened during the pre-war area that was referenced in the Point Lookout DLC? Yeah, there was the new plague, which was referenced in Point Lookout. And there were all sorts of, viruses and diseases and contamination that were unique to the Pit DLC as well. So biological horrors are not new to the Fallout universe, and it does make sense that within the context of the Fallout universe and having to deal with radiation, that these viruses and bacteria would mutate in unique ways in unique locales. So it's likely that we'll see something very unique explained away with bacteria in Fallout 76. Marinka Green says, how good was Nuka-Cola Dark? Is it worth $70? I already bought 2 bottles. They will be arriving in a couple weeks. I have to admit, when I went to the Greenbrier, I didn't try any of the Nuka-Cola Dark. I just wanted scotch. Thanks for the tip, Justin. Will you role play when the game comes out? Probably not. I like playing role-playing games, but I don't like doing a lot of role-playing. Too many dark memories from walking into Goldshire and finding people RPing in the inn. Yeah, I think I'll steer clear of that. Clorox Germicidal Bleach says, are you concerned that completing the game by yourself will be impossibly hard? No, I'm not. I talked with some Bethesda devs and they assured me that you could play the entire game solo if you want. Even though some encounters were designed for more than one person, I'm pretty sure there are going to be some ways to get around that. Carl says, guys, this game has no NPCs. This is not Fallout. I always find it amazing what small or large things someone will glam onto to accuse it of not being a real Fallout. I mean, the same thing happened to Fallout 4. Guys, it's a voiced soul survivor. It's not a real Fallout. Guys, they removed weapon condition. It's not a real Fallout. Guys, you only have 4 choices in the dialogue wheel. It's not a real Fallout. That doesn't really mean anything. I mean, that is not the reason it's is or is not a real Fallout. Of course, it is a real Fallout. Like, it's Bethesda owns the IP. Any game they publish with the Fallout name is a real Fallout. I think a better question is what is it that makes up the essence of a Fallout game? And I wouldn't say it's voiced NPCs. I don't think having NPCs that talk with you makes it a Fallout game. That's not the defining feature of it. I really don't know if it has a defining feature. But back when Interplay was still in charge of the IP, I mean, they were working on a Fallout MMO when it got canceled. So clearly, an MMO is not the thing that makes it not a Fallout. If the people who invented Fallout before selling the IP were planning on making a Fallout MMO. I always think it's funny. Robert says, was the Overseer talking about the Scorched? Maybe. I thought that the Overseer was talking about the Scorched or ghouls, but then we walked into that church and we saw the petrified corpse, and there were those green glowing streaks through the body. Was the Overseer talking about that? But then she did say she got attacked by something. So there's still a lot of things we need answered. Laura K says, Oxhorn, a soda jerk is what the Vault Boy is doing in Nuka Tapper. It's a low-wage job from the 40s. I see. Thank you for the clarification. Mr. Random Potato says, Oxhorn, maybe the Scorched are like the Marked Men in New Vegas. Yeah, they have a similar vibe, though the Marked Men are very different. They're, they went crazy. Their minds went crazy after being nuked by the Courier. And then the unique weather that was at the Divide just stripped the skin from their bodies. So they did become ghouls in a way. They did become highly irradiated, and they went crazy, but without skin. I think the Scorched that we find, it's going to be interesting to learn why they're called the Scorched. Because they are ghouls. They're a type of ghoul, a variant of ghouls, but they're very different from the ghouls we're familiar with. So I'm excited to learn more about them. And Jacob says the one thing that I found out is that when you go into your Pip-Boy, the enemies will still attack you, which you would actually have to find a safe spot to look at your inventory. Yeah, that's why I hid behind that building when I arrived at Point Pleasant to heal up and switch weapons while I was under attack. Dawson says, Oxhorn, I'm going to roleplay a merchant rifleman who looks like me and has my real-world special stats. How are you planning on playing it? Well, when I play a game, I don't play myself. Like, I don't pretend my character is an extension of myself, or that I'm trying to relive myself in my game. I like telling other people's stories. So if I have more than one character, which you can have more than one character, I'll make them all very different from each other just to have a different experience. I'll probably start with a sniper, just because that's the kind of gameplay I'm better at, and then move on to an assault commando build or something like that. Thanks for all the work, says Dalton. Thank you very much. Tyler says, loving the 76 content so far. Thanks for the hard work so quickly, making me want the game more after a lot of skepticism. Yeah, I think going and playing the game made me want to play it more. Did you end up meeting other YouTubers, asking Ocean? I met a few. Many YouTubers arrived in a different group before me. But I met a small handful of YouTubers while I was there. Jeremiah Golder says, what are your thoughts on the seemingly is-level requirements for wearing power armor? And I wonder what kind of virus petrifies people like N76. Yeah, that's a great question. As I said earlier, the level requirement for weapons and as an extension armor doesn't really bother me. From a lore perspective, I wonder about it, but we need to separate game mechanics from lore, so it doesn't bother me that much. I mean, at least we don't have to go off and get power armor training to use the power armor, as we did in previous games. Thanks for the tip, Hover Taxi. Keel says, I think that weapon the dev in the Exo one had is some kind of wave gun. It looks sort of like a heavy gamma gun. Yeah, it had that vibe. I kind of felt like it was an industrial tool converted into a weapon. Eric says, Ox, thoughts about the Brotherhood holotape? Are you referring to something I haven't discovered? I learned that the Brotherhood is in the game based on some Brotherhood fatigues that we found in a developer's inventory, but I didn't listen to a holotape that said about the Brotherhood. Do you know where you can point me to listen to that holotape? Cole Smith says, hey Oxhorn, if there are no NPCs, is it possible to actually find the Overseer alive? Also love your videos. Hope you enjoy the Greenbrier event. Yeah, by announcing that there are no NPCs, that kind of spoils the quest, doesn't it? I mean, our primary quest is to find the Overseer, hopefully alive. But if Bethesda says, oh yeah, no NPCs, I mean, that kind of kills any hope of finding her alive, right? My bet is that we're going to follow her through this really long quest that takes us all over the map until we eventually find her dead, having done some heroic sacrifice. Just so that we all revere her, or having uncovered some horrific Vault-Tec experiment secret or something like that. I don't know. That's just my guess. The Kerbal Noob says, Ox, for the first time on Xbox, you did amazing. Thank you. That was my first time ever holding an Xbox controller in my hands. I can't think of a time I ever played Xbox before. The last console I played before this one was the original PlayStation. I never played the PlayStation 2, but I did play the original PlayStation. Ocean Man says, are we able to romance the Mothman or nah? Probably not. I mean, with no NPCs in the game, aside from enemies, I guess that presumes that the Mothman will be an enemy. TJ says, do you think the infection turns the scorched into petrified corpses over time? That's a great thought. Very possible. Rama Toulon says, overseers are not known for being selfless. Well, it depends on the vault. For example, the Vault 81 Overseer, the original one, was very selfless. She refused to do the Vault-Tec experiment, thereby saving her vault. So it depends on the vault that you go to. Also, for example, in Vault 11, one of the very final overseers we learn about from that vault was extremely selfless. She gave her life away just to save other members of her vault. So it just depends on the person. There are some people who became Vault-Tec overseers knowing what was going on and agreeing to it and just being generally disgusting and evil, like the Vault 88 overseer whom we met in Fallout 4. But there are many other Vault-Tec overseers who were almost as in the dark as to what Vault-Tec was doing as the people in the vault. And many of them, when they discover what's really been going on, side with the people of their vault because they really do want to do well. They love the people of their vault. So it just depends. We can't make a broad assumption about all overseers just because a handful of them have been pretty evil. Christopher says, any suggestions on what perks and special points, point allocations? I keep getting bits of tobacco in my mouth. Sorry. What special point allocations would be smart to invest in at the beginning to get a good start other than lockpicking? No, I would be the worst person to ask that question because I didn't focus on gameplay. I focused on lore. And I'm really intrigued by the gameplay. Like, I'm going to enjoy sitting down and figuring it out and tweaking my character and trying to get all of that to work. But I don't know how to do that right now. My frustrations with the way that I chose to spec my character at the beginning came purely from a lore need. I came upon terminals and safes that I couldn't access because I didn't choose the right perks. And that annoyed me. I don't like being locked away from the story. That's what I want to play the game for. So when I play my character, I'm going to invest in lockpicking and hacker as early on as possible. That said, we can swap perks at any time, right? So as long as I get those perk cards, I should be able to assign a lockpicking perk card when I need to pick a lock, and then move back to like a melee perk card when I need a specific bonus. It'll be really interesting to see the builds that other YouTubers make based on this game. Valentin with the tip says, hey, what's up, Oxhorn? Good job on the Fallout 76 videos. Thank you. Good, sir. Good to have you on the program. Jay McKibe says, any content of your time at Greenbrier minus the gameplay? I thought I saw you in other YouTube blogs. Thank you for your take on focusing on the lore and story. Made it more interesting than anyone else just doing the combat. Well, thanks. That's what I wanted to do. Yeah, tomorrow I'm going to be publishing my Greenbrier Resort video log. In that video, I'll have a little bit of footage of me walking around the Greenbrier, out of breath the entire time. That's a big place. And then I'll also be showing off more footage from Fallout 76 that I didn't get an opportunity to show off today. Wiry Puppet says, will Fallout 76 be canon? Yes, it will. Bethesda makes it, and any Bethesda game about Fallout is going to be canon. Awesomeniac says, lore-breaking event. The guitar in our bedroom was already tuned when we used it. Oh man, you're right. That ruins the game. It's literally ruined. Mr. Goat says, I watched Camelwork's video on 76, and in the comments people said that everyone playing the beta were paid to say it's good, and that they're shills. Is this true, or just people hating the game? It's not true. So it's one of those things where it's frustrating because we did receive compensation in a way. We got this wonderful trip. They paid for my plane ticket. They put me up in an awesome hotel, and they were incredibly kind to me while I was there. And it's human nature to want to show kindness back to someone who's really kind to you. I don't want to be mean to Bethesda. They were so nice to me, and I really enjoyed my time, and I appreciated the opportunity. So, in that vein of things, yeah, I mean, it's not inconceivable that someone's view might be biased towards Bethesda after going through such a wonderful event, which of course is part of the reason they're doing it. That said, I mean, I think it's hugely insulting to say that every single person who went there lacks their own professional discipline enough to be able to be swayed by a wonderful steak dinner and a fancy hotel room. If it was bad, we would say it's bad. I mean, people would get more clicks by saying it's bad. And that's the thing that I think a lot of trolls like that forget. It's that negative information does way better. If this was all just about the money, it would be more profitable for all of us to write blog pieces and news articles and to make videos just hating on Fallout 76. That's the stuff that makes it to the top of Reddit. That's the stuff that gets hundreds of thousands of views on YouTube. Everyone loves a big controversial story like that. So when you see someone coming out and trying to have a level conversation about it and mentioning its good points, that person is actively trying to be fair. There are so many other people that are going to invent controversies, and you've seen this before in other YouTube videos, and you'll see this in the coming days and weeks after this big event, saying, like, top 10 things I didn't notice at the time, but now make me hate Fallout 76. You know, things like that, because they get views, right? There will be those videos, and they get lots of views, and people are rewarded for making that kind of content. So, no, I don't think it's accurate in any way, and it's highly disrespectful to say that any journalist or any YouTuber is just a shill for Bethesda because they took an opportunity to play the game early and gain access to some lore or some gameplay footage that otherwise they would have no ability to comment on. Here we are going out of our way to get the actual game on our hands so that we are well informed before making a decision about the game or before commenting on it. That's very different from someone who goes to the YouTube comments having never played the game saying, this thing sucks, it's not a real Fallout game. Who do you think is better equipped to talk about it? The person who played it? Okay. Anyway, sorry, it just always cracks me up. Mr. Rain and Potato says, which Fallout games would you consider to be canon if you had a choice? Also, would you like to return to the West Coast? I would love to return to the West Coast someday. It's one of those things where I am glad that Bethesda doesn't do a lot on the West Coast, aside from Operation Anchorage, just because they're really respecting everything Interplay and Obsidian has done, and they don't want to mess with those factions too much. I mean, they're showing Obsidian and Interplay a lot of respect by kind of leaving that lore aside and building their own connected world on the East Coast. But I would like to see a game on the West Coast. I'd love to revisit that world, see what happened years after the events of Fallout New Vegas. FaZe Potato says, hey, what level do you think we can find the Exo Power Armor Oxhorn? I don't know, but I saw people in their 50s wearing it, so I mean, you don't have to be 60. Talk about the radio stations. I don't have a lot to say on them. There are no DJs. We're not going to find DJs like we did in previous games. But the music is great. I mean, it's all stuff we're used to. I mean, more crazy songs about uranium from the 50s. What more can you hope for? Blossomy Lion says, did you get up and yell Gary when you saw that Bethesda had invited you? I was tempted, but no. Austin says, hello, Oxhorn. I really love your content, and I wanted to hear you say a name I came up with. Wolfmeyer McThorne. Oh, that is a cool name. Here, let me say it again. Wolfmeyer McThorne. That's a cool name. Hey, thank you for that link, Tommy Hines. I will be exploring it later. It's a Reddit thread about Brotherhood. I'm looking forward to going through that. Taz says, Ox, are you going to cover the Creation Club stuff that was released while you were gone? Yeah, I will. It's going to be later this week. I still have a few more Fallout 76 videos to publish this week. And as you can see, I've got a big mess to deal with. I'm trying to get my office ready for the beta. When the beta drops, my goal, if I can share my heart, is when the beta drops, this office looks like a legit studio so I can sit down and live stream Fallout 76 multiple times each day. I'm not going to have the content ready to start making lore videos about Fallout 76 when the beta drops, so instead I'll be doing a lot of live streams each day, and I hope people will enjoy that until I get enough content to create lore videos. Goofy Old Guy Plays says, based on Brotherhood history evolving around 2100s-ish on the West Coast, I think any idea how we find them in West Virginia? Well, that's not how they evolved. The Brotherhood of Steel was founded before the war. I mean, the first Maxons seceded from the United States government days before the bombs even dropped. And he's the guy who founded the Brotherhood of Steel. Then they left the Mariposa military base in an exodus towards Lost Hill only a few days after that. And the exodus probably took them, a couple of weeks to get to Lost Hills. So the Brotherhood of Steel was essentially founded in their headquarters, which we can discover a few decades after the bomb, 50 or 60 years after the bombs dropped, almost within the same year that the bombs dropped. So the Brotherhood existed at the time of this game. What is highly unlikely is that the Brotherhood had any sort of contact with the East Coast or West Virginia. So how are we going to explain Brotherhood fatigues in West Virginia? I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm sure there may be a good lore reason that is explained in Fallout 76, but I'm eager to learn what that is. Your thoughts on the new VATS? It seems good for close quarters chaos, but bad for sniping. Yeah, I struggled with VATS, which is why I didn't cover it in any of my videos. I didn't want to make rash decisions about it or misinform people, so I just didn't talk about it, but it was difficult for me, and I really need to play the game more to better understand it before I talk about it. Mr. Real Madrid says it's too far from Lost Hills. I mean, I think you're right. I think it is too far from Lost Hills. I mean, when the Brotherhood did their great exoduses across the continental United States, first in Fallout Tactics and then again in Fallout 3, they used Zeppelins. They took to the skies. Well, we don't know what Lyons did. It's possible that Lyons did an on-the-ground trek across. I mean, after all, he did reach Pittsburgh and went through there and wiped it out along the way. We have no idea what sort of wake of destruction Lyons' Brotherhood left, aside from what he did in Pittsburgh. But that was so many years after the events of Fallout 76. I just don't know how we're going to explain a Brotherhood presence in West Virginia. Teleportation? I mean, we know it's possible in the Fallout universe. Thanks to the Institute. PRFC says, big fan of Fallout 3. First game beat. Nice meeting you. Pleasure to have you on the program. And Fallout 3 was my first Fallout game as well. Taz says, why do you think the map isn't in the Pip-Boy? Pardon me. Well, they were going for a touristy feel. I mean, the map is really attractive, and it feels like a tourist map with major points of interest as big cartoons on the map. That said, I do miss the Pip-Boy map. I loved the look and feel of the Robco Pip-Boy map, and I'm surprised that that's the map. Like, the last thing I expected was to open my Pip-Boy and check on the map, and it turns into the tourist map. I mean, I don't know if there is another map. I honestly didn't have time to check. Malachi says, been a while since I've tuned in. Still suave. You know it. Trotsky says, do you think there's any possibility of seeing Enclave activity in 76 silos? Just wondering if the Overseer's Order may foreshadow something. Well, the Overseer's Order came from Vault-Tec, not the remnants of the United States government, but we did get the impression that Vault-Tec wanted the bombs, wanted the missile silos, even if that meant depriving the remnants of the United States government, which we know became the Enclave, from them. So is there a conflict between the Overseer or Vault-Tec and the Enclave in the future? Maybe. Now, would they have called it the Enclave? I don't know, because the Enclave is the name of the oil tanker, the Poseidon Energy oil tanker on the West Coast, where many government officials fled to after the war. That's why they're called the Enclave. They were named after that oil tanker. Now, that oil tanker is still on the West Coast. As of the events of Fallout 76, has not yet been destroyed. Would any government remnants in West Virginia call themselves the Enclave? I doubt it. I doubt it they would call themselves based on the name of a tanker that's nowhere near to them. We'll have to see. B. Cherry and Jones Drinker says, thank you for starting the live stream at 10 in the morning, the exact time I have to go to work. Love you too. Yeah. What can you do, right? Ox, hope you enjoyed your trip, says Conduit. Thank you. I did enjoy my trip. Still haven't caught up with the 76 videos. Flatwoods was a surprise for me. That's such a podunk spot. Well, I hope you enjoy the videos when you get to them. Blossoming Lion says, okay, for real this time, what was your reaction to getting invited from Bethesda? Well, I'll go into all of that in the video that I publish tomorrow, but I was surprised, honestly, and really pleased. Shoal says, when will you do the Those quest in Fallout 3? And they're on the future if you like. I can buy you a PS4. Don't understand much of that, but I do understand the Those quest. I'll be doing those later. I wanted to wait until I had finished Paradise Falls before doing the Those quest, because there's a certain thing we can do to Brian Wilkes that we can't do unless we've been to Paradise Falls, so I wanted to do that first, but it's gonna come. Laura says, can you say hi, Dougie, to my autistic son? He loves you. You betcha. Hi, Dougie. Glad you're on the program. Jacob Prower says, after playing Fallout 76, do you have the feeling of itching to play more even though you're back home? Yeah. I walked away from my gameplay of Fallout 76 wanting to play more, and that's a good sign. Black Banana says, do you think there will be a Vault-Tec presence in 76? That's what I was wondering. I mean, one of the things that stood out to me is before they left the vault, they got an all clear. We learned that from the terminals inside Vault 76. They were waiting on the all clear. From whom? Well, presumably from Vault-Tec. Does that mean we're going to find a Vault-Tec presence in West Virginia? Quite possible. Facebook gave me a shout out for my detailed videos of 76. They did? Cool, I'll have to check that out. What do you think about the microtransactions in Fallout 76, Oxhorn? I mean, I don't mind them. They're cosmetic only. There are over 70,000 items in the game that we get by buying it. 70,000 items in the game. That's plenty of stuff to do, even if we choose to never purchase a skin for a power armor or whatever. So, yeah, it doesn't bother me. All right, one more question, then I'm going to end the broadcast. Alex says, how did you get to play Fallout 76? I'll let you know tomorrow in my vlog, my video log, on my trip. Spadaz with a tip. Thank you very much, good sir. Zero. Hey, Oxhorn, what do you think about Fallout 1 Remaster? I don't need it. I mean, I've played Fallout 1. I know the story. I like playing Fallout 1 as Fallout 1. I like the charm of that game as it is. I don't need a remastered version of it. I'd prefer new content. J.A. Bristol says, is it just me or did the Overseer in 76 sound like the same voice actress as Overseer Barstow from the Vault-Tec Workshop? It didn't sound the same to me. Barstow was a ghoul, and she sounded like a ghoul. The Overseer from 76 just sounded like an elderly woman. Probably in her 50s, having spent 25 years as the Overseer of Vault 76. So, she just sounded older. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming to this impromptu broadcast Q&A of Fallout 76. Didn't get to do a live stream on Thursday because I was out of town, but hope this makes up for it. We will still have a show on Thursday, same Ox time, same Ox channel, and we'll be doing some more Wolfenstein gameplay at that time. I've got a few more videos about Fallout 76 that'll be coming out, and then I shall return to my regularly scheduled programming, so never fear. We'll get things back to normal in a short period of time. And then later today, or later this month, we're gonna dive into the beta and be doing a whole bunch of content on the Fallout 76 beta. So hope you're looking forward to that. Be sure to subscribe here on YouTube if you don't want to miss any of my future Fallout 76 videos. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you this coming Thursday at 7 o'clock p.m. Pacific time for my next episode of Scotch and Smoke Rings. Cheers.